congratulations to Kirtana for pulling it off. It was I think a very successful start, which I'm sure is only going to be the first step out of many successful milestones that this book is going to achieve.
Thank you, Pranav.
Great. So also in the meantime, would just I think this would be a very apt platform. What we've decided is, especially for the NHRW members, for the people who are present, we'll keep discussing about this book, but as a early bird offer, and for all the folks who are present here, decided to you know sell this book at a discounted price just for everybody here. So I'll just quickly post the discounted link on the chat group here. So we're giving the book away at a special 10% discount, especially for the folks here. So I hope you're all going to use this opportunity and at least have a look at it, because it's just a fantastic book. In the meantime, folks are still pouring in and coming in. In the meantime, I'll just quickly have a very quick read about the reviews on the book that we've received. Kirtan, I hope that's fine before
Yes,
we start.
sure, please.
Great. So we've had some very wonderful reviews on this book. The name of the book is Storm Beneath the Grey. It's a combination of five short stories, or as Kirtana would like to call it, not so short stories, about very central characters, people that you can very easily associate yourself with. Which people who are definitely going to leave an impression on your mind. So, a couple of reviews that I would like to read out to the audience here. Vaibhav Purandare, who is a very senior journalist and an author of a bestseller Hitler in India and more. He says, if Kirtana plumbs the depths of human emotions, she has shown with verve and aplomb that she could make action riveting in equal measure. The writing is crisp, and the tension in each one of the stories is taut, leaving the reader constantly curious about what's going to come next. So I think it's a fantastic review. It doesn't reveal much, but at the same time, it just wants you to pick up this book and just never let it go. So I think it's a very wonderful review. Shekhar Sirin, who is a Bollywood filmmaker and a director of Chicken Curry Law, he says every story is so pregnant with hope that just when it seems that the protagonist is tangled in a web of hopelessness, their sheer tenacity helps them unshackle themselves, break free, and dance with life. Storm Beneath the Grey for me is like a Bible of emotions that will help any reader understand their own relationships for what they truly are. Wow. And Sonia Pardesi, who is a celebrated persona coach and a founder of Sonia Pardesi Image Consulting. She says, Storm Beneath the Grey is a brilliant depiction of larger than life characters who each have a strong, distinctive personality and imprint on the reader through their impressive traits. The description of towns, villages, fragrances that engulf marketplaces, cultures so diverse yet vibrant that they take you to that place, give the reader an identity, and enable you to merge with character. So, extremely positive reviews. I think it's exciting to just read about the reviews. So I'm sure all the readers are going to have a fantastic time reading the book. The folks who are just joining in, just want to reiterate. So we do have a special 10% discount on purchasing Storm Beneath the Grey. This discount is only valid till 59 p.m. today. So would request everybody to please make use of this opportunity. It's something which is specific, or it's special only for the members who are present on the spot. So please do head up to that link, type in that discount code. It's a brilliant offer that we have. All right. Without much ado, let's get the event up and running. Everyone okay with that?
Sure, sure. We can get started.
All right. Great. A very quick introduction about the author, Keertana Sampath, who is present on this call today. I think that would be the apt beginning for our sessions. Keertana Venkatesh is a journalist turned marketer and a co-author of several anthologies, including A Melange of Outpouring, Labyrinth of Relationships, and Story Through My Eyes. She was recognized for her literary works as a young poet by the International Society of Poets in Maryland, USA, and by the Poetry Society of India. Her poetry published in audio and print format of anthologies by both organizations. Over the years, she has honed her passion for writing as an editor, feature writer, and columnist with several leading media houses in India. She has also played a critical role in establishing successful content marketing strategies for major global corporations. A mother of two adorable girls, she often pens her learning as a parent and her outlook on everyday life, her quirky style in her blog, which is this story, this short story .wordpress.com. Uh, Anything that you want to say? Or we
Thank you, Pranav.
great. All right, let's just quickly get into the book. I do have a couple of questions that I would like to ask, and would love to hear your side of the story coming straight from the author's mind, I would say.
Sure.
So the book and the reviews that we just read, it has a lot of the book, which is Tom Beneath the Grey, it focuses heavily on exploring, different kinds of human emotions. It explores so many varieties of emotions that it's something which I'm sure the readers would find very relevant. So, what was the thought? Was that a conscious choice of writing?
Okay. If I have to, bring it to the context of the discussion that we have today on the importance of fiction when it comes to understanding human psychology, or the way the mind thinks, the underlying factor for everything that we think about, or the way we react, is human emotions, right? We are colored by our emotions. So each of us lives in our own little world, and our world is influenced by what happens with us, what happens around us. um, if I you know if you can just think back on your own childhood, like each one of you, um, the way we've all been brought up is with stories, and the stories talk about different types of emotions. So it's about how somebody feels. It's about how you say something. We are always told, you have to be very respectful towards your elders, whatever be the situation, because there's a reason why they probably speak in a certain way or say a certain thing in a certain way. So it helps you understand the gray shades. It helps you understand, delayer them, and understand why they behave in a certain manner. Which is why, yes, I do focus a lot on human emotions, because once you start understanding people from the emotional perspective, the way they react, the way they act starts coming into a better perspective. And when that perspective comes into play, then the understanding between two people starts improving a lot more. And it's easier when you see these emotions on TV, or on in theater, or when you see people portraying those emotions. But how do you bring that out into writing? How do you make your writing more cinematographic? So that's an attempt that I've definitely made. So some of the things that I've looked at is, if when you read the book, you'll see is, there I've gone to the level where I've spoken about things like, when they clench their fist out of anger or frustration, the knuckles turn white, and that's the bodily, that's the body language that comes into play. When somebody is like suddenly becoming very, wary about something, and they're trying to control themselves, it's about, how their spine goes stiff, the back goes stiff. While it's easy to see this on visual media, I think in a book, it's very important that it is brought into perspective and is made and is it helps the reader visualize these in the mind's eye. So it's not just about saying, he was angry or he was upset or she was flabbergasted by what happened, but it's
Right.
about everything else that goes on. Like in one of my stories, which is called A New Beginning, there's this character called Smriti who meets an other character. Like basically, she meets her ex-husband after a long time, and he just kind of flaunts his second wife in front of her. So how does she react to this? On her face, she's very impassive, but actually her body language is that her toes are curling into her slippers, because she's very annoyed and frustrated, and she's having a whirlpool of emotions which she's not able to convey. And her personality is such that she does not want to express this on her face and give her ex-husband the satisfaction that he's flustered her. So these are the various types of emotions that I've tried to bring in, but the larger emotions are on the topics and the socio-psychological subjects that I have adopted in speaking out these stories.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think you rightly said, when we look at something like visual media, it's very easy to show clenched fists or the emotion. I'm sure it also has its own set of challenges, but bringing it onto print, paper, bringing those emotions onto the reader's mind, I'm sure it was a challenge in itself. So I would say kudos to you for
Thank you.
achieving that. All right, that actually brings me to my next question. So what actually were these psychological aspects that you actually focused on while you were creating characters? That's something.
Yeah. So stories generally, when they are said, there's always in most cases, it's a and they lived happily ever after. But life as such is not always happily lived ever after. It's like, probably I would call it, the kind of lives that we live is like an Ekta Kapoor serial. There's one problem that ends, and then you start living life very beautifully, and then there's another problem that comes, and that is what makes life very interesting, because it keeps throwing googlies in your face.
Correct.
It can be something as simple as, when you have young kids at home, the kind of antics that they come up with, the kind of questions that they come up with, the kind of activities that they are involved in. You're not prepared, for it. There's no handbook or rule book to say that, hey, if they react like this is what you need to do. It's just spur on the moment about the way you react to a situation. And that's there everywhere. It can be something as simple as, you're working on a project at work, and everything is fine, you're ready to go live, and then something goes wrong, right? You're not prepared as such for a problem like that, but then the tenacity of the human spirit is such that you kind of stand up and live up to it, and you go ahead and find a solution. And that was the basis on which all my characters in the book are based on. And it's not just the major characters, it's also every minor character, because what I've basically tried to do is bring out a piece of life from a person that probably you and I know. All of us might just know these people. There might be a Vinod, living next door, or there might be a Smriti living, down the street, or there might be a Kavya who is probably your friend at work. But at the end of the day, how is it that you start reacting to such people? How is it that you understand what they're going through in their life and not become, biased, judgmental when I say this? Because like I was mentioning yesterday as well, during the launch, people say that, oh my God, the divorce rate has gone up so high these days. Especially since the lockdown, we've seen a spike in the number of divorce rates, and then we become judgmental, saying why do they want to separate, especially if there's a child in the marriage. How can they not think about the child? The point is, if they're thinking about the child alone and not about themselves, they can never give the child a happy life, right? Because there's never going to be any kind of camaraderie between the husband and the wife, and if they're not able to create a happy setup, how are they going to give the child any kind of happiness and peace? At least here they're very demarcated. They've decided that they want to live life peacefully and move on, because they cannot live together peacefully. Until we understand these backstories, there's no way that we can be truly empathetic in the true sense of the word. And these are the kind of psychological factors that I've kind of brought in when I was, crafting each character in the story.
Wow. Okay. I think you're just letting me flow into the next question as based on your previous answer. These characters that you talked about, you could be talking about probably a Smriti or Vinod or somebody who is somebody we can very easily associate ourselves. Or probably while reading the book, you can say, "Hey, I know this person. This person is my friend, or he was my colleague, or my mentor, anything of that sort." So that actually brings me on to my next question. So out of all these characters, it could be either a main character or a sub character. Probably at the start of the story, you might feel this character might not be of importance, but later on, he might be a pivotal character. You never know. I mean, I'm just assuming. So, out of all these characters that you've created, having the sense of something which is, very easily understood by the reader. Which out of these characters would you say was the most difficult to create? And probably if you can also if you can answer why was it very difficult to create, it would be easy.
This was a question I was dreading. So, uh, see, I think every character as such is very close to my heart. As you said, because they're just normal people. They're just people like you and me. There's no fantasy over there. There's none of them are larger than life. They're all like very much regular normal people like us. So it was something very easy for me to relate to. But there was one character who's a minor character, in fact, that was quite a challenge and to create, which is the character of Ved in the third story of the book, which is called Holocaust of the Womb. So Holocaust of the Womb basically is a story that talks about infertility, the stigmas that are related to infertility, where one is it's the cause of infertility is always blamed on the wife. And there's a lot of social ostracism that comes into play. There is a lot of psychological trauma that comes into play. There's a lot of family drama that comes into play when it comes to this particular topic. And today, of course, people are a lot more open. There's a lot more medical there are a lot more medical facilities that are there that people can relate to. But what about couples who went through this trauma in the 80s and the 90s? I think almost all of us might have heard of stories either within our families or families that we know where if one wife is unable to conceive, the man just marries another woman, and they say because they want the vamsha to flow, the family lineage to continue. But the question is, was this the only solution? Did certain couples take a different stance altogether? But at the same time, they were also kind of trying to overcome the social stigmas that they were facing, the social ostracism that they were facing. Now, after 20-25 years of having made those decisions, which are concerned as the best decision of that time, how did they again, face the darkness of that moment? At that moment, it might have seemed the right decision, but did it have the right impact after 20-25 years? And in this particular story, this is a story that involves a family, a husband, wife, and two children, their daughter and their son. And the difference in the way that the daughter comes to know about the truth of her life and the difference in the way in which the son reacts to understanding the truth about his life is where the conflict comes in. And I think the character of the son, Ved, is one of the I think it was quite a challenge because I truly had to think about how he would probably react and why he's reacting in that particular way. So he's one of the minor characters, very, very close to my heart, because when you look at things from his point of view, you just feel so empathetic. If I had just told you, his reactions to the situation when he comes to know about the truth of his birth, it may seem like we would just become judgmental and say, hey, you know what, this is not the right thing to do. His parents have done so much of good for him, but look at it from his point of view. And he just seems so alive. And I think that is a character that I found like really, really difficult to. I wouldn't say difficult, but I invested a lot of time in bringing out his personality in the book. And and I definitely must say here, I would like to credit, one of my reviewers, Shekhar Siran, who is a director in Bollywood and who's brought out a fantastic movie called Chicken Curry Law. He played a very important role in helping me layer and understand Ved's character, through a very, very interesting discussion that we had, after which I sat down to write about Ved and give him a lot more perspective and a lot more personality.
Wow, interesting. That more than answers my question or something that I was looking for. Nice. All right. Cool. Before we continue, for the benefit of everybody, I've posted a link on the chat box here in the meeting. This would be for the purchase of, and especially for this session today, and this discount code which we have is for 10% for the. This discount code is only going to be valid for today, the end of the day. So please do use in this offer and get as many books as you want. We have Christmas, we have New Year, we have boatloads of festivals and holiday seasons coming up. So please don't hesitate to purchase them to give them for your loved ones as well. Thank you so much, everyone. All right. My next question to you, Kirtana, it would be, something related to, again, the previous answer that you've given, because I'm just flowing into, into the next question from based on your answers. You've mentioned about, Shekhar Siran, who is a Bollywood director. He was, who has given a fantastic review for your book. Would people like them that you would like to call, who would be your biggest inspiration, or who would you credit your biggest inspiration for just getting this book into existence? Because there's a lot of emotions that is involved. There's a lot of investment of your own self that you've given into this book. There's a lot of time which I'm sure many of us struggle to deal with it these days, right? Time management is, I'm sure, one of the most sought after skill for people. So having so many challenges put in front of you, who or what would be your biggest emotion for just ensuring that this book comes into life?
Great. Okay. So, see, and I'm going to kind of relate this to the topic that we're talking about, which is about, fiction and stories, right? There's always a reason why a story is said. And that is, it can be something as simple as, if we all go back to our childhood again, some of the common stories that we are told are about the hare and the tortoise. It's a slow and steady wins the race. We're told stories based on, a stitch in time saves nine. Now, when somebody says these sayings, it's not very easy to understand, right? But the moment you put it into perspective with a storyline, the moment you say it with examples, you tell it to them, showing them the consequences of what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad, and in different circumstances. Like in the hare and the tortoise story, you're taught that if you do things in haste, you might just lose the race because you may just be too fast and get overconfident. But similarly, there might be another story that says that you have to do certain things at a certain time, and if it requires a certain pace and a certain motion and a certain movement, you must go with that flow. So there's which is why we all live in the gray shade of life. We have to make decisions based on what is the best foot forward that you need to put to achieve a certain thing, to do something in the right way, in the right manner. Like if I have to take the stories of Krishna. Now, Krishna, throughout the Krishna Puran and throughout his role in the Mahabharata, there are several things that he has done. If you dissect it, it may not seem right, but at that particular moment, it's possibly the best thing that he could have done. Like very recently, we were having a conversation, I was in a conversation with Mr. Ramkumar Seshu. After the book was, when I went to give him a copy of the book. And he told me only one thing. He said, I still don't understand why Krishna had to wait all the time till the Mahabharata war to disclose to Arjuna the Bhagavad Gita.
Uh-huh.
He says if he had said this right at the beginning, before the whole split between the Kauravas and the Pandavas, probably the disrobing of Draupadi would not have happened, and then the whole Mahabharata war itself would not have happened.
Couldn't have happened.
Yes,
Correct.
yeah. So why is it that he waited right until the war to disclose this? There is also another story, part of the Krishna Puran where they're fighting against the Rakshasas, Krishna and Balarama, and he never kills that particular king. He keeps waiting for him to come back 13 times with more soldiers to keeps killing those soldiers in every war. The reason is because he says because these are negative energies that need to go. The war may have happened, may not have happened, but the point is you need to get that negativity out. If you look at just that one situation of the 13 wars, you may wonder what's wrong with him. Why can't he just kill that king and get done with it? But the problem is not just with the king. The problem is with the fact that he has percolated his negative thoughts to tens of thousands of people, and all those thoughts need to be purged. Right? So which is why I think coming back to your question, it is very, very important that we tell stories in a certain way which is very pertinent to the society of the times. If you look at the stories in Storm Beneath the Grey, all the 5 stories, I've used very, very Indian language, very Indian characters. The names are all Indian. There is no Elizabeth, there is no Martha, there is no David, there is no Peter. I'm not talking about a religion, but primarily this is the fact that we are all used to reading English literature, which is very British or which is very American. It's time for us to talk about how the Indian society is and how our mindset needs to start changing, or which is already changing. Like in the very first story of Untie the Knot, where I talk about, I've made an attempt to discuss homosexuality. There is a perceptive mind shift in at least in the tier 1 and tier 2 cities where we have the LGBTQI parades happening. There's society has become more open in talking about homosexuality and accepting people with different sexual orientations. But the fact is, for a person who is participating in the parade, is it important for him to be there at the parade, or is it important for him personally at the emotional level, at the psychological level, at the personal level, to be accepted by his or her family for who or what they are and for who or what they have been born as? Right? It's time for us, as I spoke earlier, about to talk about the facts of infertility. It's time for us to understand that there are certain people, there are certain couples who like to have that balance in their marital life, and they make certain decisions to ensure that that balance never goes away. Probably because for them that balance is what gives them the peace that they require. But at the end of the day, in the effort to keep that balance, are they actually losing out on their personal peace? Is that the right choice that they've made? Right? The last story, in fact, is one of my favorites, and it's quite the head turner, is what a couple of my reviewers have said. Because it's very different from the first 4 stories, and it's more of historical fiction. It's called The Insania. It's got a little bit of fantasy in it as a sign-off, but one very pertinent subject that I've tried to take on, though it's not the central subject, but a pertinent subject over there, is about food habits. So everybody today is talking about vegetarianism, non-vegetarianism, and veganism, and there are debates about what's right, what's wrong. It's gone to the extent where some people have it's impacted some people that I personally know to such an extent that they have gone to the level of saying that no, we can never live without non-veg. It's gotten embedded in their in their mind that they have to have non-veg every day just because it's a protest that they're having against people who always tell them that no, you shouldn't be eating so much of non-veg.
Got it. All right.
But if you look at the way the food habits are created, let's not go to the world. Let's slowly look at our country. You have more of wheat eaters in the north. You have more of
Correct.
rice eaters in the south. You have more of fish eaters and marine food eaters in the coastal region. You have
Right.
people who are core vegetarians in certain central parts of India. A lot of people are non-vegetarian and non-vegetarian only to certain animals in certain parts of India. And there's a reason why, because that is the kind of food that was available in abundance. In Bengal, they call the fish jalpushp, which means it's a flower of the water. It's not considered
Mm-hmm.
non-veg among them, right? That is
Correct.
because their food habits are shaped based on what is available for them to eat, because at the end of the day humans are alive uh, because they need to, I mean, humans need to eat to live, right? How can you
Correct.
become judgmental about a person's food habits by saying that this is the right thing? Like, there are some people who send me videos about veganism, and they say how veganism is the only best way forward because animals are being tortured and killed to feed people who like to eat meat. Yes, the
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
practice is wrong, to breed animals to eat. But look at it from a larger picture, from where this entire habit started. Go back in time to when humans started living in societies and learning to cook, and then you'll
Mm-hmm.
understand why a certain a custom or a community or a practice is followed, for centuries, because it's important for them. That is the way for them to survive and thrive in this entire world,
Correct.
right? Of course, there was a point when there were only few thousand humans. Today we are like in billions, and it definitely does have an impact on on nature, on on the way we live, on the requirement for food.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a different story altogether at that point. But at this point in time, you can't just get judgmental and say it is because of non-vegetarians that animals are being tortured, or it is because of vegetarians that who have milk products, that cows and buffaloes are being milched every day, and they're going through such trauma by being milched every day. You can't really say that, because there's a certain habit that they follow, there's a certain practice that they have. And when we start understanding things at this level, the empathy factor starts getting better, and then we start looking at people in a very different light. We start understanding them in a very different way. And when that understanding comes in, I think um, the way we start living life, the quality of our life starts improving, which is exactly why, I believe that these are the kind of topics that we need to start speaking. And this is not just in India, I would say this is in every part of the world. Some countries are more open to these discussions, and I think it's high time that we also in India start opening up, and not at a public forum, not saying, hold a mic and speak about it, but start having these conversations at the level of your home, with your families, with your children, with your parents. Get into the groove of having these open conversations, and then you'll see that the quality of your life itself starts improving so dramatically that it makes living all the more beautiful, despite all the storms that one would weather in their lives.
Definitely. Yes. Wow, I think there's a lot of emotion to take in, but at the same time it makes sense because it's very easy for people to come to conclusions. It's very easy for people to just figure out something which is either black or either white, right? And I think this was something which was brought up yesterday in yesterday's conversations as well. Right? So it is. Uh, it doesn't always have to be something which is black or white, and I'm getting this feeling, just seeing the cover of the book, just seeing the title of the book, that it's always the gray areas which people call it, right? Because gray is something which is always associated with unknown, or it is something which people cannot actually define. Right? So it's a gray area. What they call it is something which people are very hesitant to talk about. Could be something which people are not very comfortable living in. So I think would it be right to say that that is the emotion that, or the emotional chord that you've tried to bring in when you consciously talk about, it could be a color or it could be the just the aspect about it, but is that where the word the gray has come from in the title of the book?
Yeah, so let me give you this, very interesting anecdote. So a few months back, I was mentoring a few wannabe writers, and this was during a writers' workshop, a retreat by Spark, my publisher, a publishing house, and one of the exercises that I gave the participants was, now we are all aware of the very famous dacoit. What's his name in Sholay?
Mhm.
I'm not getting his name right now. One second. Let me just have a think.
Is it Gabbar?
Gabbar, yes.
Mhm.
So, the way Sholay has portrayed Gabbar is that, he's like the real mean guy who has no scruples, who does not care about anything in this world, and it's all about I, me, myself for him.
Correct.
So, one of the exercises that I gave the participants at the writers' workshop was think that, Gabbar is your protagonist and talk
Mhm.
about his backstory, about why he became what he became. And the answers that I came up with was so amazing. Some of them went to the extent of talking about how probably he was abused by an alcoholic father, which is why, he became what he became. Probably about
Mhm.
how he was abandoned on the streets as a young child, and he was hardened by society. How, he probably was born as a psychopath.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Now, when you start looking at things like this, just imagine the character of Gabbar in your mind and think of these different backstories. Now, start looking at Gabbar in that light. Doesn't he start seeming more human to you?
Hmm.
Because none of us in this world are born good or bad. None of us are very good, none of us are very bad. It's not right. Even God is not completely good or completely bad. So
Mhm.
all of us have the balance between the yin and the yang. It's about which ways more, which ways less. We are made up of mind and matter. We're made up of the white elements and the dark elements. The point is, where do you bring in that balance, and how do you bring in that balance when you are in a situation? How do you react to it when you see blind people crossing the road? Okay, do you stop your car and allow them to cross? Do you stop your car and also get down and stop all the other vehicles that are there, allowing these blind people to cross the road? Or do you get down and hold the blind people back and tell them to wait until until all the other vehicles move and the road gets more clear? Or do you just honk and scare them away, make them jump back onto the pavement and drive? If you do honk and jump back onto the pavement and drive, are you doing it because you are in an emergency and you need to reach a certain place at a certain point in time? You start looking at these things, and that's when you realize how decisions that you make you a good person or a bad person at that given moment. How is it related to your conscience? How conscientious are you at that point in time when you make these decisions? And those are the gray shades that I try to bring out in all my characters in Storm Beneath the Grey.
Wow. Okay. That's I was gladly expecting that answer, but most of it was a surprise because as you rightly said, people at that particular situation, might assume that oh, this person is a bad person, or, based on that particular decision at that situation. They might be a judge of character, they might be a judge of decision makings, but what actually is the backstory to it? I think that's a very essential route that we need to condition our mind into thinking, because then I think it would make more sense, and we would see the world in a different light, is what I would say. So well said. Okay, I think the next question that I have for you is, so there are, just by reading, I mean, just by listening to your answers, just by the overall feel of the book, I would say, there are several unexpected twists and turns, within each story in Storm Beneath the Grey. You might, till one part of the story, you might feel that the story is heading towards a particular direction, or as the folks yesterday were mentioning, somebody like Mr. Prakash Bedawadi was mentioning that you feel, um, you know, the you're already making up situations in your mind, right? This kind, probably situation A might happen, or B or C might happen, and I strongly feel that situation B might happen, and then you think probably a situation Z, and you say, what, we are going here. So, what prompted you to do so? What was the rationale, or what was the idea behind bringing so many twists and turns on this story?
Okay. So the first rationale was to keep the reader hooked.
Uh-huh.
Okay, but as I said early on in when we just started this conversation, I think it's all about the way life throws googlies at you, and my writing style is such that I keep oscillating between the past and the present, and that is the because I believe that's the best way to show you a backstory. If I just start from the beginning and progress, okay, this happened in 1990, and this happened in 1995, and this happened in 2000 and 2005, or this happened in January, this happened in Feb, this happened in March, this happened in April, you're not going to understand why a certain character reacts in a certain way.
Okay.
Okay, so there has to be an oscillation. So the surprise elements happen because of this particular oscillation of time. They come in because of this oscillation of time. Some of the most pertinent places where you would find this kind of surprise elements is one is in the second story, which is called A Grey Shade of Love, where the surprise element pretty much happens towards the end of the of the story, and it kind of just blasts there. But a lot of these surprise elements come in the second half of my fourth story, which is called A New Beginning, because that explores the relationship between two people, Smriti and Amrit, who ideally would have made like a fantastic couple, but the choices that they make are what keeps them apart most of the time.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And it's not just about their choices, but it's about the relationship that each of them has with Amrit's parents. How the guy's parents react to him and the way they behave with him vis-a-vis the way they behave with their daughter-in-law is very, very different. The kind of support system that she gets, even though she's thrown into a trauma from unexpected quarters, is the kind of situations that probably it does happen in all our lives. I myself know of stories where the husband has abandoned the wife, and the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law turn out to become like literally start living like a mother and daughter themselves. There are situations where children have been abandoned, but they've found lovely homes elsewhere. These are situations that happen in everyday life, and we shouldn't really be shying away from bringing these out in the open and talking about them, because yes, these are situations that are meant to happen, and they're bound to happen because we're all human and we live in a world of humans, right? And this, which is why there are a lot of twists and turns. You'll also find a lot of twists and turns in the last story, The Insignia, where which is the historical fiction piece that I've brought out. And the entire story of Insignia was again a very challenging piece to write because it's all based on floodwaters. So the whole story happens in a span of 4 hours with a bit of backstory to it, but the entire story is based in floodwaters and go back to the time of Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, and that's where it's situated. So this the twists and turns in that story also very interesting to pen. In fact, while I was writing that story, I think it's by far one of my most favorite pieces of literary writing that I've done until today. Was where I was literally visualizing the entire story in my mind like a movie when I was writing it. So the twists and turns came in, with the flow, and yeah.
Wow, amazing, amazing. Great. And I can already see folks, taking up the offer that we already have. So we've had a couple of purchases with the discount. So,
Thank you very much to all those who are purchasing the book, and I do hope you enjoy reading Storm Beneath the Grey. I'll be happy to have your feedback if you do would like to share it with me as well.
Definitely, I would love that. That will actually bring me to my last question. And before we do that, let me just share the feedback link onto this chat as well. So, folks, probably they can use it for today's session, but also, in general, if they would like to give a feedback to the book, a review for the book, or just, get in touch with the author, I think they can do that as well.
Yeah,
Would that be right?
I can share the publisher's email ID, and she will be able to send me the feedback. So feedback about the book, it can be shared on sparkbooks19@gmail.com. I'm just sharing that.
Amazing, amazing. Great. All right. That brings me actually to the last question which I have, which I'm sure readers like me who are not very avid or very tenured readers, I would like to call it, because we usually and coming to a concept of these books, I think they're slowly. I mean, I don't know what to say, but it's slowly on a declining trend. Like people usually prefer, holding an iPad or a Kindle in their hand rather than actually holding a physical copy. And the situations are turning into such. So, somebody like me, at least, who is not that an avid reader, when that kind of a book gets sold to me, with so many twists and turns, which I definitely enjoy, reading about, or when I want to understand some character, obviously, somebody like me, I would want to relate to a character reading the books. For folks like me, not just for the tenured readers, but for somebody who's an occasional reader, or who's somebody who's an aspiring reader, or he's just getting into that flow. What would you say is the impact that be created in that particular person's mind? Probably once they read the entire book, or once I'm sure it's a 5-part book, which I would say is not so short stories with 5 different aspects which are into. So I'm sure each and every subcategory of these books would have their own impact. But as a whole, when a person finishes reading Storm Beneath the Day, and what would you say is the biggest impact, or what would you say is the major impact that you have on that particular?
Yeah. So, see, as I've been saying, see, ultimately it's about talking about socio psychological topics, and that's what I want to bring to the fore. But for a not so regular reader, the fact that this is a book with 5 stories, separate stories. So at the end of every story, you're done with that piece. You don't have to wait to finish an entire novel. So you read one story today, you can read another story another day, and you can take it over a period of time, and it's like it's done, dusted. It's like the OTTs. You have like 10-episode series and 12-episode series, and that's it. It's over. You can move on to the next one. You don't have to sit for years and years and watch a complete serial,
Yes.
right? That's one aspect, and which is the whole idea behind Storm Beneath the Grave was to make these topics become everyday discussions. And the only way that you can impact a larger audience is by keeping them short and sweet. While these are not very short stories, but they are pieces that can be finished, like every piece can, if you're a reader with a reading speed of about 150 words per minute, I think you can easily finish like one story in about an hour and a half. So that's the intent was that, and the intent was to help people understand how important it is to understand the tenacity of people by delayering them. And as I said, the more you delayer, the more empathetic you become, and that is the need of the hour today in this world. So that was definitely the basic intent of writing Storm Beneath the Grave.
Wow, amazing, great. That definitely got me what impact can have on the others. For the members present here, I've just quickly shared a feedback form for today's session. So, in case if you would be kind enough to please provide a feedback within that form, that would definitely help out a lot. So, please do head over there and provide your feedback this session. And I'm also again going to resend the entire message which we have. So this is a special 10% discount that we have just for today. and it's exclusively for the members who are attending this session. So we already have a lot of folks who are taking making use of this discount code. So please do head over to the link there to purchase your copies. Please do purchase it as wonderful gifts for your near and dear ones as well. I think that would definitely help. So please do head over there. Head over to the link. Use the discount code discount 10, which I've also mentioned in the chat, and please do purchase your copies. With that, Kirtana, I think I am at the end of my questions, but I definitely received a lot more information and input than I was able to grasp. But very, very wonderful session, very well put. I'm sure it's going to get many folks curious to be reading this session. Any parting words that you would want to say?
No, it was wonderful. It was a wonderful interaction. I really enjoyed myself. It made me also kind of reflect and think about various reasons as to what could have been the other reasons that I had in mind when I was writing this book, and voice them out. So thank you very much for this opportunity, Pranav. It was a wonderful interaction, and I do look forward to feedback from the readers here who have purchased the book. First of all, thank you very much for purchasing the book, and if you do have any questions that you would like me to answer, I'm more than happy to field them for you, and I will look forward to your feedback as well once you read the book. And,
Amazing.
thank you, Mr. Ramprasad, for having me on the NHRWA platform. For a change, I'm not the moderator, but I'm being asked the questions.
Thank you, Kirtana. It was a wonderful session. As Pranav and the discussion was so interesting. It is like we are all sitting face to face and we are listening. That's a feeling that I got it. Very rarely it happens when you're sitting in front of a Zoom or this type of sessions. And as you rightly said, I love to read book, but I don't have patience or by looking at the book itself, the size of the book itself, I will feel like sleepy. And I read, a few pages, and next when I read, it may take a weekdays or something like when I'm traveling. But something what you have mentioned, the short stories, which you can take about half an hour or 45 minutes or 1 hour, we can read one and we can done with that. So we can go to the next one. So this is very much interesting for me, and definitely I'll read and give my feedback. It's a genuine feedback from my side.
Thank you very much.
And one more thing, using this NHRWA platform and the Giftrys, whatever we have done, one shot of 500, we have sold the books, Kirtana. This is for your information.
Thank you. I see Dr. Krishnamurthy is also here.
Yes. He is also there. He was very much happy, and he was telling that my blessings to Kirtana, and he was so happy. And total 499 books have been sold as of now, and we need to look into that more this thing. And the NHRWA platform, all HR from different parts of India, they were also messaging me personally, saying that it was very nice because of Sunday and Christmas and holidays, people are not able to log in. They said that we'll also love to buy it and read it to encourage the young writer.
Thank you very much. And I think, yes, this book is definitely something that would appeal to HR people, because they are people managers, and I understand Pranav is also a people manager. So when you are a people manager, you are in a situation where you need to understand people for what they are. And this is, in fact, one of the training sessions that I conduct at the corporate level is about, having critical conversations with your team. And how do you manage that? Because the dynamics are very different when you are in a corporate setup. And the only way that you can do it is by delayering and understanding what the backstory is of your team member, to understand why or how they act and react to a situation, and how do you bring in corrective measures at that point in time. So I do hope the HR managers out at NHRWA do find this, and all leaders, in fact, anybody who is a people manager, I hope you do find this book useful and help you understand people better and become more empathetic towards them, especially in this current times where we're all under extreme stress on getting the businesses up and running after a slack during COVID.
Precisely. Yes. It definitely appealed for me as well. Yeah, definitely looking forward to it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on the NHRWA platform once again, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you. And my good wishes and all the best for your second book, which you already started.
Thank you.
I don't know whether it's in which state it is in your mind or it is in the paper. I don't know.
It is.
But
It is
my good
already. It's
wishes.
already on Word file. So.
Okay.
I'm sure, with the interaction with, I'm sure if it's in her mind, then it's not going to be long before it's, in a launched book format. So really looking forward to that already.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Great. And I would say definitely, I think 500 books, in less than a day, because we launched yesterday late in the evening. So I think, in less than half a day, with 500 books being sold already, I think it's a very huge feat. So congratulations for that, Keith, and
Thank you very much.
many, many more milestones to come, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
By end of March, I wish that you should sell 1 lakh books
Thank you.
across India.
Thank you.
So
Thank you
excited
very
for that.
much. Yes.
Thank you, Kirtana.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Pranav, for an excellent, question answer session, and it was a lot of eye opening. And as I feel that as if I have read a book, the way you're explaining, it was very nice, Kirtana.
Amazing. Yes, I think it was my pleasure as well interviewing Keith. It was it's always fun to do that. So thank you so much, and thank you everybody on the call for being part of the session. Uh, a gentle reminder to please head over to gifttrees.com to please purchase your book at 10% discount. I've also shared a link for the feedback for the session. So if you can please be kind enough to provide your provide your feedback for the session, I think that would be really helpful. With that, I would like to conclude. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time and for encouraging, one of the budding authors here. So thank you so much for
Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend ahead.
So we are crossed to 500. Seema just now ordered one book.
Thank you, Seema.
So it was 498, become 500 now. Thank you.
Thank you.